My name is Daver, and in this video, I'm going to show you how I made a watch stand out of walnut and cherry. Stick around, this is Daver Made. I had a lot of nice hardwood cutoffs in my shop that I didn't want to waste, so I decided to go through them and use them for this project. After looking through my hardwood cutoffs, I decided to use some cherry and walnut. And I'm actually using gummy cherry, which is a figured type of cherry from my understanding. I thought that the walnut with a little bit of cherry would look really nice, and I was making this watch stand for my brother, who collects watches, and I think this would be a style that he would really dig. Hopefully I was right. Now, I was also making this as a gift for Christmas, and it was really coming down to the wire. So I tried my best to pick pieces that were already cut to the size I needed. They weren't all perfect, so I did have to rip some of these down and get them to the actual size I needed. I'm ripping the walnut pieces to about 1 inch wide, and the final dimensions will be about 10 inches long for all 3 of these pieces together. The cherry piece in the middle is a little bit under 1 inch, and I thought it would just look better as a little thinner accent piece than having all of the pieces be the same size. Now, the challenge with using these cutoffs for this project was they were all various thicknesses, or thickni, so I had to run them through the planer to get them down to the exact same thicknesses. Once everything was milled down to the width and the thickness that I needed, it was time to glue it up. I know these pieces aren't even lengthwise, however, I'll deal with that a little bit further on. After leaving this clamped up overnight, I removed the clamps so I could then begin to remove any glue squeeze out. I'm just using some cheap chisels that I got from Harbor Freight years ago to clean off any squeeze out. And I'm just going to pass it through the planer just to kind of take off any leftover glue and any kind of unevenness that I may have caused when gluing it up and clamping it together. And here I'm just squaring up each end to the final length and using my Rockler precision miter gauge to cut the ends off on my table saw. Now for the base piece, I already had found a piece that was pretty much cut out to the size I needed. However, I just needed to square it up, so I'm using my patented belt sander clamped down to a workbench to clean up the edges, to square them off a little bit, and then add a round over on my router table. The round over that I was using was a little narrow, so I decided to change the bit to a little bit more of a more rounder round over, I guess, is what you would describe this as. Then it was back to my edge sanding belt sander to clean up the edges a little bit more and just make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Now, compared to the top portion that would hold the watches, I wanted to match that round over look that the base would have. So it was taking the top to the router, and just like that, I had a nice rounded over top portion. Now here I'm trying to decide which side of the stand I wanted to have facing the operator or the user of the stand, and there was some really nice figuring on one side of the cherry, so I decided to use that side to face out. Now here I'm trying to figure out the stand portion that's going to connect the base to the top portion. After some questionable cuts on the miter saw, which I won't show here, I was trying to figure out the best way to join everything together. Now, this design is inspired by a culmination of designs of watch stands I saw online. However, there was nothing really specific on how you would put it all together, so I had to use my best guess and decided to use dowels. I made sure to carefully mark center on the top and bottom portion of, I guess I would call this piece the neck piece. Once I had my dowel holes marked, I carefully drilled in the dowel holes. On the 45-degree angle portion, I had only a little bit of room, so I had to be very careful. Now on the bottom portion of the neck piece, I had a little bit more depth for the dowel holes. Then after finding center on the base, I lined up the neck piece and gently pushed down using these pointy dowel markers. Transferred the holes to where I would drill on the base. It worked pretty well. So then I drilled dowel holes, marking to not drill too deep. And then I did a dry fit, and it looked pretty good. And then I did the same to the top piece. Again, being very careful to make sure everything was lined up. For the dowels that would be used for the top portion of the neck piece, I had to cut the dowels off because there wasn't a lot of room, but I needed to make sure that there was enough to join everything together and keep the top piece connected. Once all the dowel holes were drilled, it was time to pre-sand everything before the glue up. And this is a good time to talk about sanding safety. While sanding is a very mundane and monotonous task, I was not paying attention and the edges of my sanding disc actually cut my finger and my thumb, so make sure you're paying attention and don't fall into a zone when sanding. Now it was time for the glue up, and I was feeling a little unsure about how I would do it, but I knew I was going to use my hide glue until I realized the bottle was dried out, so I'm using Titebond 2 instead. Now for this glue up, I wanted to be extra careful not to have a lot of squeeze out because it would be a pain in the butt to remove once the glue had dried. Here I'm trying to figure out how to clamp this all together, and due to the awkward angles and size of the pieces, I decided to just let the glue dry without any added clamps. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I did, and it worked. Spoiler. Then after letting the piece dry overnight, I came back and did my last sanding by hand. And once that was done, I just wiped everything down with some mineral spirits to remove any dust. I wanted to use some clear lacquer spray on this since I was running kind of out of time and I needed a quick finish. I heard many good things. So I thought I'd give it a shot. And I also wanted to try out this spray shelter that I had recently purchased. Now applying this clear lacquer spray was very simple and it dries extremely fast in between coats. It said you didn't need to sand in between coats, so that was a plus in my mind. However, when the piece dried, I did not like how it looked. There were some blotchy marks, and I don't know if that's because the temperature wasn't that warm in my shop. However, also isn't cold, it's heated, and even though it didn't need sanding, it looked really bad. So I decided to refinish the entire piece using walrus oil furniture finish. And I have to say that I don't regret doing that. This finish is so nice, and it's a penetrating oil finish. It just looks so much nicer. While it does take some time to dry, it is well worth it. And I have to say that this project turned out really nice. I'm very happy with the final outcome, and the walnut and cherry contrasting woods just look so good together. Once the finish was dry, I took my one and only fancy watch and did a little test fit to make sure that everything sat nicely, and I think it did. So I was really thrilled about how this turned out at the end. I hope you got something out of this video. For me, it was a very fun project to make and a nice gift to make for my brother. Here's a picture of my brother using this watch stand with just some of his watches. I think he liked it. Well, he better have liked it, and I hope you liked watching this video too. If you did enjoy this video, please consider gently tapping the like button. We don't need to be aggressive about it. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do so to see future videos just like this one or other videos related to woodworking. That's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.